Welcome, everybody. This is Illiterate. My name is Evan.
My name is Taylor. I read a book this week.
I watched a movie. This week, we're doing Emma. We've done Jane Austen before, but way early.
Episode 4.
Whoa.
And this is episode 62. But we'll cover a little bit more about her.
So we're getting a little bit back into Jane Austen. There was a new film. Emma was just released earlier this year. It is now out on video on demand.
The quarantine.
Readily available. So while we're all stuck inside, Emma is out there. I just watched it. Honestly, it was a breath of fresh air. It was really, really fresh. I was kind of dreading it, but just because it's period, and
Right.
I know that they're going to take the language very seriously, and I have to like prep myself for that. And be
But
like,
I'll post
here we go.
I'll post a link to the trailer because the trailer is marvelous. It sets the tone perfectly.
I didn't watch it. I didn't even. think to
But
watch
definitely
the
check
trailer.
out our links in the show notes. Look at the trailer because this feels very, very fresh. Sort of a Wes Anderson-y slapstick comedy take on it. Very stylized. Which...
I enjoyed it immensely. It was lovely. It just was outright lovely. And it's a first-time director, Autumn de Wilde. I've not seen too much from her. She's done a Florence and the Machine video
Right.
that I've seen. But other than that, I believe this is her first feature. And I've just got to say hats off to that. This is a detailed movie that lives in the glances between people and reactions. That's what cinema is about. That's what cinema can do that a book can't do hardly. And this movie lives and breathes on that, on just that substance.
Yeah, so I looked a little bit into her. She is known as, like you said, music videos, photographer. Her father is known for his photos of Jimi Hendrix.
Oh, really?
And she followed in the footsteps and has photographed album covers for tons and tons of people, but just some names that you might know. Miranda Cosgrove, Elliott Smith, The White Stripes, Beck.
Wow.
She directed music videos for The Decemberists, Ingrid Michaelson, Death Cab for Cutie.
Okay.
She did live concert work for Arcade Fire and The Flaming Lips. So she's
got-
done a
yeah,
lot.
yeah.
She's got that music sensibility, but like you said, this is her directorial debut in terms of a film.
And
with-
it's straight up period too. I mean, and
Yeah.
down to the language. This is really dense language stuff. At times, I get kind of lost in waiting in it, but most of the time, I'm getting right to what they're trying to say. That's really hard to do. A film that kind of takes it that seriously, that I felt was more dense and harder to get into, was something like The Witch by Robert Eggers. They take the period language incredibly seriously in that movie. I would say Emma does it almost as well as that, but I would say it exceeds, just because it really is cluing you into what they are trying to say and what jokes are being made under the surface all
like
the
a
time.
good Shakespeare play. You're like, if you just read it, you're like, well, I don't, like in high school, you're like, I don't know what in the world the joke is here, but it's all in the enunciation and the expressions of the characters. I will say that the screenwriter for this, another lady, Eleanor Catton, who is from New Zealand. I tried to find online how these two got connected to do this project, but I couldn't find anything. So if anybody knows about that,
it's
give
a
us
mystery.
shout out. Yeah.
I mean, you look at her IMDb page, and the movie looks a bit like a mystery because she's done all these, concerts, music, music videos, those types of things, and then but like now she's got this big movie with like people in it.
And the screenwriter Eleanor Catton, who's from New Zealand, she is a author novels. She hasn't written a screenplay.
Interesting.
Either. Her second novel, which she's known for, is called The Luminaries, and it won the Man Booker Prize in 2013. Two notable things for that. She was 28 years old, so she's the youngest person ever to win that award.
Wow.
And the book,
That's
The
staggering.
Luminaries, is 823 pages, so it's also the largest book ever to win
Oh my gosh.
that award. And she said in an article that she'd never read the novel before being approached to adapt it.
Oh, wow. That's fascinating.
Yeah, I'll post a link to that article.
She was approached to adapt it.
Yeah.
That's really, really interesting because this kind of, it's so fresh and it's so poignant in what it's trying to do. It feels very much like somebody needed to get this out there, and somebody was, somebody wanted this. It has that feel of very much of a passion project, just down into the words of it, man.
I will say, like I said, I'll post a link to the screenwriter's take on this, but she had an interesting thought about comedy, which I wasn't really aware until I read and got a better sense of Emma. How it is more Shakespearean in that way of, it's all subtext and people say things, but they mean one thing, but somebody else interprets it this way. It's all about being clever versus being direct.
See, and that's the difference between the page and the film. On the page, you're reading, you only have the words that they give you. You can try to go beyond that, but the words they give you. With the film, you can have, here are the words, here are the exact same words. But here is a cutaway to a reaction of somebody else. giving a particular reaction against the words you're listening to.
Yeah.
That then creates comedy. It's it's harder to do that visual like I was trying to say earlier, living between the glances and looks. Yeah, that is, you can't do that on the page. That's why cinema is so successful as an art form, because it brings the magic of a moment that you can't really nail down.
Yeah. This screenwriter had said, in terms of the comedy versus, and you think if she's winning the Man Booker Prize, like her other stuff is real serious, more tragic kind of stuff. But she was saying, in terms of comedy, if Aristotle's writings on comedy had survived, we might esteem it more highly as an art form. We only have his notes on tragedy, so we treat it as loftier than comedy. And she said, I mean, I agree with this too, that sometimes it can be more revelatory of human truth, less bound by conventions. I loved this phrasing that I'll quote exactly that she used, because she said, and in the end they got married is automatically lazy and generic. Whereas, and in the end they killed each other is automatically audacious and profound. But it's like just an arbitrary prejudice towards that being an end. And she's saying, like, comedy doesn't just offer that laughter. It's the reminder that change is difficult and it's usually undesired and sometimes ridiculous, but it's proof of love.
Or how obvious things were and you had no idea. That's a lot of this is being led by a character who feels that they have something to impart to everyone around them, but on the inside really is so blind to what's so obvious to everybody else.
Yeah.
Quickly, for people who haven't read the book or seen the movie or seen another version of the movie, Emma is just about an affluent young girl who is playing matchmaker basically with all of her friends and she's trying to do well. She's trying to like have them shoot kind of above their belt, trying to bring them up to her level, which is really an odd conflict of like, who do you think you are, is very much, I think, at the heart of a lot of what these stories are trying to say.
But all set in Regency England, so people are very much defined by their social class. And because she is of a very wealthy family, she doesn't have to get married. So she never even tries to until the very end, of course. But that is not a concern of hers, whereas if somebody is in a lower station, it is a concern of theirs. Yeah, so she is missing all of that, I guess, pathos in her life.
So it's just a story about a blind teenager finally figuring out maybe who they are, but more importantly, who the people around them actually are.
Yeah. And really, as with Jane Austen, there's a ton of characters and interweaving. He said this, she said that. This person goes to this ball and thinks this person
so gossipy.
All this stuff. But the main people I feel like that you, and Evan feels like that you might need to know, is Harriet, who is her friend, who then...
She kind of treats like a Barbie doll a bit, of just trying to play, trying to get her to be Emma in a lot of ways.
And she is what Emma would do. And she's of a lower station, and at first she wants to marry this guy who's of a lower station, and she's like, no, that's going to...
You can do better.
Yeah, he's much lower than you. Like, you should marry a little bit higher than him. And then the other person is George Knightley, who is older, much older than her in the book, around her age in the movie.
Yeah, it was not so. I've realized after the fact that in the book, that is one major difference, that he is much older. In the movie, they're pretty comparable.
And he's kind of the voice of reason to her flightishness in terms of getting her nose in everybody's lives. And then, of course, by the end, it turns out that she actually is interested in him.
Throughout the film, it's very much as Emma goes off and makes some mistake, and Mr. Knightley and her come back to like talk about it, and somebody's actually coming to her and be like, do you understand what you just did? It's really fascinating.
That is kind of the setup of the first half of the book. It's like every other chapter she does something, and then they talk about what she should have done.
Yeah, that's very present in the film. I suspect, I don't know outright, but I suspect that the film and the book are really, really similar.
She definitely took whole passages. I saw in an interview that the screenwriter did from the book, so the dialogue is verbatim what's in the book for a lot of it.
That's how it felt. That's what I was hoping.
But yeah, this guy who plays George Knightley, Johnny Flynn, do you know anything about him?
No, I've never seen him in anything. I fell in love with him immediately.
He's a very famous British musician.
Really?
And this is where the music angle ties in with this director. Yeah, she called up a musician friend of hers in England and said, if you were to pick a British actor who you would have a crush on, who would it be? And this person that was her friend was like, yeah, my fiance would marry him. I'd marry him. He's amazing.
He's perfect.
So
I can say he's perfect.
Yeah. No,
I didn't know who he was. I was like, how do I not know who he was?
I had heard his music a long time ago, just when I was interested in indie music. in high school.
Yeah,
and I picked up on him. And then I looked him up more. He is going to be David Bowie in Stardust, the biopic that's being made about David Bowie.
Oh my God, that is going to be wild. Yeah. He'll be perfect.
And I think that's supposed to come out this year or next year. I mean, who knows?
Now we don't know.
But but it is made.
Soon. Yeah. You know, that's fascinating. Is it based on is there a book?
Probably. But yeah, those are the characters and the main actor, at least for George. I know Anya Taylor-Joy, you already mentioned, was in The Witch.
Yeah,
the girl that
plays Emma. I didn't even realize that. It's the same. It's the girl that plays Emma is in The Witch. Oh my God, yeah. I did not even realize that.
Yeah, so she's blowing up.
Absolutely. Yeah, she's a big face, and with her, she immediately elevates the film just having somebody like that in it. That she is definitely the star of it.
Yeah. And just to tie in, Evan was clueless about that she was in the same thing. There's another movie called Clueless that's based off of Emma.
If you didn't know, the 1990s touchstone cultural classic Clueless is almost verbatim Emma. You take everything in Emma, the social status, everything, and you say, well, what would that be like in 1990s Beverly Hills? I was kind of shocked when we were trying to figure out what this episode was going to be earlier in the week. I had totally forgotten that there was any literary basis of Clueless whatsoever. And then so I immediately went into watching Emma, and I'm watching Emma and realizing that it's the same plot as Clueless. I've seen Clueless a few times. Yeah. It is the exact same thing. And I gotta say, it really made me appreciate Clueless a lot more. And this comes down to the writing and the direction from Amy Heckerling. Amy Heckerling had done Fast Times at Ridgemont High just before this. And this is kind of where the genesis of Clueless is.
Classic high school movie.
Exactly. The studio execs had a success with Fast Times and a new director. And they went, well, we want to do something like that, but we want to make it about the in crowd. And immediately Amy kind of snarls her nose at this and goes, well, I don't know. I'll do it if I can make fun of them.
Because nobody wants to just write about popular people.
She went off and wrote a pilot, and this is how it started. And it had a lot of the characters that ended up in the final thing. But it started as a TV pilot about a girl trying to find the perfect prom dress. And then it started evolving, and she ended up realizing on her own that she was writing a very Emma-esque character, decided to revisit the book and went, my God, this is already so much in the sphere of what I'm already doing. I might as well just make it Emma. And I'll have to do some more research on this. I should have, forgive me before the show, but this, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong out there, but I think this actually started a weird subgenre of 90s teen movies based on books, based on old literature. Most of them aren't great.
Walk to Remember is Nicholas Sparks' one.
Oh gosh,
that's originally set in the 50s, but then it's in the 90s, that kind of thing. Yeah,
there's one for Othello. There's a ton. Really is over a dozen of these. Most of them don't reach. Almost none of them get to where Clueless does. But this, I would say, is the beginning of this strange thing that goes, it permeates well into the early 2000s of making teen movies, but, echoing old literature through them.
Yeah, I had seen, she was saying, when she started seeing Emma, who is like manipulating in different people's lives, fiddling with things, like all of that kind of stuff, she said it's not that different from being a movie director. And she was like, if Emma was alive today, she'd probably be directing films. She just, that part of that character where she just is slightly interjecting, and she's always got a little bit of her hand in a piece of everything. That's what a movie director does.
Absolutely. I think I saw that interview as well, and I laughed out loud at that, and I went, yeah, probably not too far off. Now, what has Amy Heckerling been doing? What is the last thing she's been?
She did a movie called Vamp, which then still had Alicia Silverstone in it.
Oh, really?
About vampires. Yeah, I think that was close to the most recent, biggest popular thing.
Alicia Silverstone, the star of Clueless, if you don't know, she started her career. This is how she got found for Clueless, by starring in Aerosmith videos, music videos.
Wow.
Amy saw her in an Aerosmith video. They were all over town. I mean, Reese Witherspoon from last week, she was about to nab this role. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Sarah Michelle Gellar. These were the type of people that were really circling like sharks this role. But Amy saw Alicia Silverstone in an Aerosmith video and said, this is her. This is Cher. They renamed her for Cher for Clueless, but this is our quote unquote Emma.
Yeah.
that's how she ended up getting going, and she's still working today. And she ended up being Batgirl a couple years after this. I mean, became a big, almost a sex symbol of the late '90s by the late '90s.
Speaking to the music video aspect of this and the connections between even more modern times, there's a song called Fancy by Iggy Azalea.
Mm-hmm.
And the music video won a bunch of awards, but it's literally Clueless and some similar scenes from it. And they're wearing the same wardrobe, and it's them in the, in the tennis courts, and it's them in the classroom, and all that stuff filmed at the same high school in California, in Los Angeles, where they filmed Clueless.
I lived down the street from Circus Liquor. It featured heavily in a sequence in Clueless.
But Amy, the director of Clueless, saw this music video Fancy I saw. She said it looked like they had more money than I did to make this music video, but she loved it. She said it was great, but like you said, it still transcends because Clueless is now a cult classic, probably on its way to a classic.
No, I'm after studying it like this, I think I'm pretty well certain that this is going to be regarded as a classic as we continue rolling on,
or at least what people look at as School and Beverly Hills and kids of the '90s.
When we introduced it, I said a touchstone, a cultural classic touchstone, and I think that's what it's going to be of its moment. It certainly is a movie very much of its moment, and I think that is why almost it will be remembered, because it was so tapped into just what it was really like at that time and place. Amy and many of the filmmakers sat in on real high school classes just to make sure, because they're translating from Jane Austen to '90s Beverly Hills. It's just a staggering job that they've done. And what I mean by this is that this movie is so good, you could watch this and Emma almost back to back and never know they were based on the same thing, even though they're that close to each other. That's how good Clueless is.
I did see there was one more interpretation of this that happened at exactly the same time. So there is a film called Emma that came out in 1996. Clueless came out in 1995. This is the version that stars Gwyneth Paltrow. The director, Doug McGrath, wanted to do a modern version of Emma set in New York City.
Oh.
And he was unaware that Clueless was already in production. He was clueless about it.
Wow.
Well, we can't do this at all. So they set it in Jane Austen times in the 1800s with Gwyneth Paltrow. This was kind of the jumpstart to her career. She had been in one other minor thing before this, but then she really blew up. But I think this one did not do as well because as her star status grew, she, as Emma the character, appears less humbled by the end of the film than she does in the novel.
Really?
And so that was one of the criticisms that I saw of it.
That's fascinating.
But odd that it was happening at the exact same time and still was not regarded as
such.
You
don't even remember it. And it's got a big name in it. And it was produced by what? Studio with wherewithal. I didn't even know it existed until looking into Clueless.
But that happened at the exact same time. But that brings us back to the olden book from the 1800s that Jane Austen wrote and why that holds sway in these stories and what she was trying to get across. Just as a couple of refreshers, because like we said, we did do Jane Austen a long time ago. If you do want a more exhaustive take on what she's about. We did Pride and Prejudice. That's episode 4. But just a little take on it. Her books were all published anonymously, so it said written by the author of Sense and Sensibility. We had said that she got no recognition in her time, and women were not supposed to be writing at this time, and so nobody knew that she was the one doing this. She is one of the first people to use this literary device called free indirect speech. So it's a third-person omniscient narrator, but instead of saying he thought or she thought, you just say it and go into the character's head. So it's a bit more ambiguous as to whether it's the character's opinion of what's happening or the narrator's objective opinion of what's happening.
That's interesting because Clueless has a voiceover from Cher the entire time, speaking just like that. I'd have to say that would be what they were trying to do cinematically.
And so you're like, this is...
And Emma and the new Emma has no voiceover. It's just straight out. That's it. That's really interesting.
But that Jane Austen is regarded as the first person to really use this, and now it's used all the time. We don't even think of it as a literary device because it's like, oh yeah, I have a narrator and I just go into the thoughts of one of the characters.
She pioneered that.
Yeah. God. So that's what she's known for, and it's huge in Emma because, like we said, it's all about what is this person saying versus what do they actually mean, and then in the third layer, what is the other person thinking, which they thought they meant. But she is also one of the people that transitions to sort of a literary realism. She's an odd mix of in between two phases of writing. Before her in the Age of Reason, and after her the Romantic period. So, like we said, a big theme of hers is directness, not cleverness. And so people might think she's a little bit more conservative because she's tied back into the old Age of Reason versus the newer romantic emotions, that independence, gotcha. That kind of stuff. And that's where people get confused. I guess the ending can be a little confusing, like with her being in the middle of these two time periods, because they're saying, is it really happy? Because she does exchange her independence and energy and wit as this person who's doing all this matchmaking, even though she is clueless in her own life, for a subservient marriage for the time. And she gives up, like we mentioned, this character, Harriet. She gives up her intimacy with her because now Harriet is married into a lower station. But it seems like she pays no mind to that. It's just better that she's in an appropriate match versus trying to rise above class.
Right, at the end, and that's where it lands in the film is, well, she's happy, and that's more important. And obviously, they're meant to be together. There's something in particular that they do with the casting in both Emma and Clueless, but where the casting is subtly. It's way more over the top in Clueless, but that's the comedy. It's so funny because of that. But in Emma, it's very subtle, and the casting is cluing you into who is meant for who, obviously, very clearly. Yeah. It's like the screen is screaming at you. These are the matches here. Yeah. Quit getting in the middle of it. Stop this madness, Mr. Knightley. Just stop.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So one of the other themes that then comes up, barring the ending, is her and her intelligence. And the fact that, like, Jane Austen is potentially speaking to her own issues in this time and place where she is a smart, independent woman. She never got married. She rejected people who wanted to get married to her. But the fact that with Emma, the only thing she can really do is guide these marital situations of other people around her. In the book, one of the other characters, Jane, compares a governess profession, which is like just being a female servant essentially to a household, to like that's the start of the book, is Emma's governess gets married. And so now she's lonely, and her sister is also off in London married. So she's the only lonely girl in this rich, empty house. So of course she's going to meddle in other people's affairs. But this woman, Jane, in the book compares the governess profession to the slave trade, meaning like a working woman is worse than just an idle, rich woman of status. But by the end, you see that it's like marriage offers a chance to participate in courtship proposals, doing something as a woman. Like if that's your only role in this society, why would it's maybe even worse to deny that? So these are the questions that Jane Austen is bringing up.
It speaks to me, seeing the difference between Emma and Clueless, is that the societal restrictions on Emma are just insurmountable, honestly. And in Clueless, fast forward society and culture a few hundred years, all those things that were restrictive for Emma can be changed for Cher and all of her friends in Beverly Hills. That is the interesting thing here for me, thinking about Jane Austen, is hearing about strong women working within the framework of the societal class that they are given in the moment. I've had arguments with like friends about Jackie Kennedy wasn't a feminist. She was. The idea here is that as a woman and as a woman of stature, you're not exactly able to change and manipulate and decide for yourself who you are and what you're going to be doing. If you don't like it, it's really hard to get out of that. We went through this with Little Women a few episodes ago, and we see it again here, is of women trying to operate within the structure they're given. The difference is when you can recontextualize this to 1990s Beverly Hills, you see kind of how archaic that way of living was, how restrictive it was. It doesn't get rid of all the problems, but it definitely shows you, I guess, the progress of our culture.
Well, that's when they're saying
we can change these things.
Instead of they saying like Jane Austen is such a conservative writer of the time, like she's reverted back into a different writing style. It's like, if you look at the history of it, as these writers are coming about in the Romantic period that identify with individual freedoms, passion, and intensity, romantics were almost exclusively male. And at that time, women were denied the freedoms of expression in terms of travel, sexuality, adventure, military status. Like, they didn't have any of the stuff that the male romantic writers were writing about. So her commitment to reason and intelligence and resourcefulness is within, like you said, the women's sphere of influence at that time. And it seems bizarre. It's like, well, why wouldn't she be on the side? It's like, well, maybe she was just an early feminist saying these things should be questioned.
Working within the system before the system has progressed and changed. It takes the thought from within the misjustice to go, wait, it could work differently. It could be differently. We can, hold on, this doesn't right. It starts there. But just because you're in that sphere doesn't mean you're part of the problem either. You have to be in there to understand what's happening to you, what's going on. I feel like I run into this argument a lot with like people trying to draw lines in the sand about feminism and where you're part of the problem, you're not part of the problem. If you're inside the machine and seeing the machine going wrong and you start to talk about that, that's the beginning of a movement.
Yeah. And just not to get into feminism wholeheartedly, but it is kind of
here we go.
how I mean, I was reading an article where they're talking about, in regards to Jane Austen, that is a big literary question of, is she a feminist? Is she an early feminist? Is she too conservative? This and that. And it's like how you kind of define it in relation, define feminism, that is, in relation to her time and place. And like we said,
I'm trying to look at the momentum of motion to motion. It took this to get this to make that happen.
And it keeps going.
Exactly.
And that's why this is talked about forever, because there are no questions answered, and we continue to question at the end of the book, how can she be intelligent and then be so wrong so often? How does Jane Austen expect us to sympathize with her, or do we want us, like, are we supposed to criticize her? And that ties into her style in terms of the free and direct speech. Are we supposed to believe what her thoughts are, or believe what she's saying, or believe what other people are saying? And then is the ending happy or is it not happy? Based on who you are in life and where things might go. Like, all of those are questions that this work brings up that then can be changed into modern times or be remembered in older times, in the case of Emma that just came out, which is why it's read so often and turned into a million things.
Adapted on every corner, man. And you don't even know it. That's the beautiful thing. Like with Clueless. I mean, it's just like
We're clueless.
I never imagined. That's why I love this show, that it would grow my appreciation for Clueless because of Jane Austen and Emma. The ways that these things connect and keep going are just fascinating, and that's why we do this.
Speaking lastly to the comedy of the new movie Emma, if you notice on Wikipedia and on the poster, there is a period at the end of the word Emma.
Okay. I don't know what you're gonna say, but I know that there's a reason, and it's interesting. I saw like a headline or something about it, but I didn't actually click it. Well,
so I looked at this.
Please.
Because it just says Emma with a period or a full stop if you're not from America.
No, I remember scrolling past it and being like, oh, interesting, and then I didn't click it for
here I am clicking on it. Because I thought, oh, this is the last book that Jane Austen wrote, or is this supposed to be the authority on this story? The director of the film said, no, it's a period film, and then laughed in an interview. And that's why it's got a period at the end, which shows you kind of the tone and the whimsy that the new movie has, and that this director has.
Through and through. The film lives on that kind of delight of...
it's a period film, so we put a period at the end. Absurd.
I have to say, I didn't know what to expect. I don't know if Emma is something that I would necessarily chose to watch for myself, but I am so glad I did. Now it really will be something that I return to over and over again. I love the movie.
Check out our links. Check out the trailer. If this has interested you, go check out Clueless again.
If you've never seen Clueless, man, it's fun. It is, and it's worth. It's not just fun, as we've gone over today. So check it out. It's really worth it. Don't sleep on it. It will be a classic. I'm telling you now.
And a shout out.
A shout out to Bolivia. We got an incredible comment, incredible message from Bolivia, and we just wanted to say, hey, thank you. We love you.
And thank you all our listeners. If you want to reach out, let us know what you think. Let us know what we should talk about.
Yeah, if you got a movie, a book, show, something, any of that kind of stuff you think would make for a good episode, don't hesitate to get in contact with us on our Instagram.
@illiterate pod on Instagram. Thank you so much.
All right, guys. See you later.